Hello and welcome to another episode of Noble. We are continuing to grow and therefore we have rebranded. Now we are called Noble Africa Show. To welcome you to the first rebranded version of Noble Africa Show, I have with me a very interesting fellow, a very interesting friend of mine. I will let her introduce herself. Malaika, welcome to Noble Africa Show.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Malaika Ogukwe. I am a new resident here in Kenya as of maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
And I'm here doing a Princeton in Africa fellowship. And so I am very happy to be here with my colleague Andres from Emerging Leaders Foundation.
Wow. So how do you find Kenya in the past 3 months?
Kenya is beautiful. It's so green. It's so lush. Everyone is very making sure that I learn my Swahili.
All right.
And the food is very delicious, and the people are just so.
The few Swahili words you've learned so far? Just three.
Okay. Chonjo.
Chonjo. Wow. I can tell the people you hang around with.
Poa.
Poa.
Okay, well, I'm starting very basic.
All right.
But then nakupenda.
Who told you this? Who taught you this?
Well, since my name is Malaika,
Yes.
I have heard the song. So
Nakupenda Malaika.
that one I have to know.
So who taught you this?
Everyone.
No. People need assemble somewhere. Just like, let's teach this girl Nakupenda.
Okay, so a lot of my colleagues in the office, our colleagues, they've taught me a lot. Sakwa in particular.
I hope he's watching the show. Yep. So, what keeps you awake?
What keeps me awake?
We gotta start with the basics before we get into the
get into
conversation.
the meat of it. Okay, no problem. What keeps me awake? Every day that I am pursuing my dreams of living a soft life,
Yeah.
but a life that also means something to others.
So, apart from what keeps you awake, we can also ask you what breaks your heart. Everyone has that thing that really hurts them. Yeah.
Children not being able to be themselves. That one breaks my heart.
Children not being able to be themselves.
Children not being able to be
Yes.
themselves.
Yeah, what do you
So,
mean by that?
as a society, we impart a lot of expectations onto our youth of who they should be, what they should grow into.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of children losing themselves, losing their spark because they are convinced they need to live their life in a certain way. And so, as I have rediscovered who I am and I've healed my own inner child, it breaks my heart that I became I went through a season of not being who I really am meant to be. So when I see other children who are like, oh, my mom said I need to be this, or I think I need to be blah, 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 when you can clearly see where their interests lie, but they're not putting they don't feel the safety or the comfort to explore that.
Yeah.
That really breaks my heart.
So how's the journey like, the journey to rediscover yourself? Yes, like what prompted that? How did you come to realization that I'm not actually living to the person that I am supposed to be?
Yeah. I think a lot of this discovery happened during the pandemic or when we were in lockdown.
Wow.
All you had was just time and your thoughts.
It's you and yourself. Yeah.
So I've been journaling my whole life. That was something that my dad made sure that me and my sisters did, and that's just something that I've carried with me.
All right.
And you start asking questions. Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of our existence? And you start going deep and you start going inward and you think about, what did I care about when I was a kid? How did I spend my time as a kid? What made me happy as a kid? And then you see the path of how the things that you enjoyed were discouraged, or they were told, you can't make a life doing, things that you're passionate about. So as I kept asking myself, who am I? What do I want? What do I want? I kept going back. What did young Malaika want?
Yes.
What did she want that she, was told was not possible or told was, not right? And how can I give that to her now?
Did you have like these childhood dreams that, finally you had to, change them probably because of what your parents are telling you about the reality about life, or the environment where you grew up. And then much later you go back to your childhood and ask yourself, what did I really want as a kid? Did you have that ever experience?
So I think I was convinced that I wanted what my parents wanted. And when I say my parents, I mean specifically my father. I grew up, he called me CEO. So I was just like, of course, I'm just naturally going to go run a company.
Wow.
Maybe I would be a lawyer. I thought I was going to be a lawyer for a long time.
Yeah.
But that is what I understood of myself. But as I've grown older, I realized I was a lot more creative than I had permission to be. When I was in high school, it was required that we take a couple of art classes, but I always included an art class every semester that I could, just because I liked having that space. But it was nothing that, my parents were gonna pay extra for. It was nothing that I had space for in the house. So it was just something that I did because it was I have to take art classes for school.
Wow.
I wanted to dance when I was younger. Took a couple of dance classes. That one, didn't last very long.
Still with the dream of being a lawyer, a CEO?
Yeah.
So dancing lawyer?
I think I didn't see dancing as my dream. It was just something that I liked to do.
All right.
I liked to, be in front of the camera. I love to take pictures, but, as a very protective dad, my dad was like, modeling is not happening in my house.
Wow.
So a lot of those things that I enjoyed doing didn't really get the chance.
Did they support the dancing beat?
Not really. Like my mom was a dancer, but dad had final say.
Wow. So where did you find a new self with new aspirations in life? Maybe new dreams from your childhood dream?
Absolutely. When I finished my undergraduate degree, I went into management consulting. I got the job. One of the prestigious jobs that when you get this job, you've made it. And I was in the job, and I'm just like, is this it? Is this what I had to look forward to?
Yes.
So that one was a really hard reckoning within myself, because by the time I was coming to this realization, both my parents had passed, and I was just like, how can I say that this life that my parents have sacrificed everything for is not what I want?
And they're not there to actually tell them that,
Exactly.
Mama, Papa, I'm changing my dream about this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, do I go out on my own? But it was like, what else is there? I didn't know anything else because I thought that was the path that I needed to be on. So it has led to a lot of exploration in my career, within myself, to know like, okay, what are my actual gifts?
Wow.
I'm good at Excel, but I'm also very good at connecting with people. So how can I find something
A balance, probably?
A balance, or something that even leans more in the way that I connect with people and the way I motivate people.
Yes.
Because the world is needing a lot more of that than, I would argue, than, a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I know sometimes it's quite a lonely experience when you're just working with a computer without connecting with people.
Exactly.
And that's probably what you didn't want.
I was, day in, day out, was looking at 3 screens. Oh my goodness, my eyes were about to fall out of my face.
So do you have that childhood dream that you think you're fulfilling right now?
I don't think so. I think the childhood dream is a dream of the past.
Okay.
So now I'm giving myself the chance to come up with a new dream.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's unfortunate because for me right now, I think I'm fulfilling one of my very childhood dreams. Because I grew up, sometimes when we came to Nairobi to my auntie's place, I used to love the talk shows, and opera was big those days, and I used to really admire opera a lot, and I would like every other episode, plus sometimes they would do like a replay of the show.
Yes.
And I would just sit there and watch. I was not understanding a lot of English that was being spoken there, but just the fact that she was bringing different people to share their own experiences, that was it. But you see, life happens, and you find yourself in a different career. So I found myself in education as a teacher, and now see where I am. I'm in the development world. But again, I thank God that I have created another platform where I can be Oprah. Yeah.
And what has that journey been like for you to know that that was your childhood dream, and then to see kind of the twists and turns of your journeys, and then now you're here? How has that journey been for you?
It's been really amazing, and a little bit of exploring, because one of the presenters in this country is called Njoroge Mwaura. Was news anchor with KTN back in the days.
Okay.
I used to really admire like how he would anchor news, and I would imagine myself there. But you see, with time, reality hits you. You realize that you're not even sure if you're gonna make it to the university. Your education is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So in the end, I had to like face reality, discard my dream, and I followed something that I felt was achievable. So the mere fact that I made it to high school, I started thinking probably education would be something I would do, because I love working with young people. I love like talking to them, inspiring them, sharing with them my stories.
Yeah.
So teaching was fulfilling. When eventually I graduated and started teaching. But again, I taught for about 7 years, but the last 3 years was like the peak of my teaching career. I transformed more lives. I had more boys coming up and just saying, "Teacher, thank you for saying this. Thank you for allowing me do this." So I started connecting with them. I felt more like a dad. But after the loss of my mom, and of course this show, we want to talk about the loss, I had a moment with myself when now I asked myself, who am I? And in the process of us answering those questions, I also realized I didn't belong to the classroom. I wanted to move beyond the classroom, because I told myself, then I listened to this interview that the late Komla Dumor used to anchor for BBC Africa, Focus on Africa. He said, like, you have to think global. And that hit me. And I was like, no, I can't be global if I confine myself in a specific region, in classroom. No, I had to think bigger. And I told my boss I'm quitting at the end of this year. And nobody believed, because I was the most passionate teacher, So I decided to
That's crazy.
come. And now the childhood dream started coming back, knocking. You remember the Njoroge Mwaura, the Oprah Winfrey? And I was like, yeah, I need to create something for myself. So I started with my audio podcast on Spotify, and then later I bumped into the Click Pictures, and we had this conversation. I was like, boom, here we are doing our 23rd episode today.
Delayed, not denied.
Yeah, so that's how the journey was like.
Beautiful.
But you see, recently we had a conversation in the office, and you mentioned something that, really opened something. Trauma is in so many small boxes. Sometimes you think you've opened all of them, and then you realize, oh, there was another one that I didn't open. It's like a room full of gift boxes, and you think some are thrown under the chairs, and then you realize, whoa, there was another one here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the loss of your mother, loss of your parents, and you said how this somehow had an impact in the trust that you had with the family, the information that you're receiving from people, external people that were now not your parents.
Right.
But again, let's start from the beginning. Grief. I still believe people grieve differently. Yeah. And do people really heal completely from loss of a loved one, especially a parent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grief.
So how was it like when you lost your parents?
Yeah.
Ooh, grief hits everyone so differently. And I wish it was something, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because it's definitely something that we need to talk about more. There's one thing that is inevitable in this lifetime, it's death. And I don't think as a society, as a collective, we're prepared for those conversations. When my mom passed away, it was sudden, but I think it was something that we always knew could happen. She had been sick for some time. But when I got that call, I'm like, you need to come home. You need to come home now. I was in university, and I remember I was at
dinner for one of my friend's birthday, and my dad called me, and I'm looking at the time, and I was like, my father never calls me at this time. What is going on? He said, you know, you need to come home. I said, okay, the next time I can come home is Thanksgiving. It's around end of November. And he was just like, no, you need to come home this weekend. I said, okay. The next couple of days are honestly a blur. I just remember just, you know, seeing my mom in the hospital and, you know, just making peace with the fact that she would be going.
That is before she passed on?
Yes.
Did you ever have that conversation that one day she will be gone?
No, my mom was a fighter. And she fought, you know. She was diagnosed with cancer when I was maybe like 10. Yeah. And she ended up living 10 years beyond the doctor's prognosis. Whoa. So that woman was not going to go down with the fight. And so I saw that strength.
And it convinced you that she might survive.
Yeah, no one thought she was gonna leave as soon as she did, and no one thought that. But when she did, I was going through the most challenging semester during my undergrad studies. I was an economics major, so I was taking macroeconomic theory. I was doing econometrics. Jeez. And I remember going to one of my professors, and I remember saying, I don't see the end of the week. I don't see the end of the week. And I feel very grateful that I had professors that were very supportive, very, very supportive, and I know that's not something that everyone is afforded. I was also very lucky that the following semester I was studying abroad. So travel became my outlet for that healing, that grief. People are often very nervous to, you know, do solo traveling. Me, I took it and I said, let me run with this. Let me go see the world, because I know that's something that my mom would have wanted for me. Then, just about a year later, my father went and joined her. And that one hit differently, because now it's both parents. And majority of my family still lives in Nigeria. Me and my family lived in the States. So it was now, okay, Malaika, you are now head of house. I have 2 younger sisters. And I remember I just didn't even know, like, everything that I understood about life went out the window.
You're the firstborn?
I'm the first. I thought I had my third parent training growing up. I didn't know that I would actually need it. So that one, I think my grieving process was put on pause. I didn't get the space to immediately grieve because I had to take care of my younger sister, who was 7 years my junior. So I needed to make sure that she, you know, I had to make sure that my junior sister, you know, I had to figure out her schooling, figure out her medical and all these things. So my grief got put to the side so I could make sure I could take care of her. The pandemic gave space to really open up and face my grief.
So your father passed on just before the pandemic?
1 year before the pandemic.
All right.
Yeah.
That's 2019.
2019, yeah. So just before I finished.
And your mom, 2018?
Fall 2017.
All right.
So I think it was 16 months or so between them. Yeah, so mom, October 2017, dad, February 2019. And, you know, I remember I was very angry. Very, very angry when my father passed. I said, why would you leave us? Why would you leave me and my sisters here? And that, being angry with someone who's deceased is very, very tough. I just, you don't know where to put it. They're not here to receive it.
And most of the time, you speaking to yourself, you're angry at yourself because, you know so well you're not gonna get any response, and therefore you have to speak to yourself. You have to sort that up, and just, you know, find how to deal with it.
Yeah. Wow. So it sounds like you might have some experience with. Let's talk about it.
No, the first person I've been angry with for dying was my uncle. Yeah, I was out of school for like 3 years, and then I got some money and I went to him. I told him, this is what I have. I want to go back to school, and you have to be there to support me. And he said he was so proud of me. And yeah, so he was like the dad I was calling to tell about school. He would call me over the weekend just to ask me how was your week like. And whenever I would go broke, I would call him for pocket money or something, because I had rented my own house and I was going to high school. So he was like really motivating me to, you know, do well. Then in my 4th year, he really fell sick and he was not able to support me. But somehow I managed to meet some German family who eventually supported me to the end.
Beautiful.
So when I got to campus, it was not so much like he was paying my school fees, but I wanted him there. I wanted him to see me complete the journey,
Yeah.
because he was like, he fueled me all the time to continue. And therefore, when in 2015, he would support me with pocket money here and there. And then one Wednesday, I call him and he tells me he was actually admitted in the hospital, and he didn't want me to know that he was admitted. So he just told me there's somebody who's owing me some money on Thursday. I'll go pick the money, and then I will send you the money. Then on that very Thursday, 5 a.m. in the morning, my brother calls me to tell me my uncle's passed on. So he was the sole breadwinner because he's the only successful person in my mom's family. He was the one taking care of my mom's medical bill. He was the one taking care of my grandma. He was the one taking care of his own kids. He was the one taking care of every other person that he's connected to.
Yeah.
And he kind of managed to do it. So when he passed on, I looked at the generations left behind. Like, this is a tree that has fallen. All the fruits that is attached to it, all the branches are gonna die, you know? Yeah, and I got so pissed off. Like, why would you choose this time to die? Because even his kids had not finished school. And I knew that was like gonna hit them really, really hard.
Yeah.
I was not in a position, I was just in 2nd year. I was not able to even take care of them. So I was like, you'd have chosen even a moment when I have this, you know, I'm employed or something.
Yeah.
So I remember one time I walked to where the coffin was, and I just talked to him like, you can't do this. This is not something you do. You have like a whole lot of generation relying on you, and then this is you choosing to go, as if people choose to die. You know? Yeah. So I was really angry, and you know, you realize that everything comes to you because you know so well. Your subconscious might be telling you, you are addressing them, they're listening or anything. But the reality is that you know you're talking to yourself, and this is your anger, and you have to know how to deal with it in the end.
I'll challenge you on that one, that you're talking to yourself, because I believe that those who have passed on, they're still with us in so many different ways, and depends on your perspective and, you know, your worldview.
Yeah.
But sometimes through my journey, I've been able to open up in this way, and through therapy has helped a lot with this. Yeah. Where I just, you know, take space, take time, get comfortable, and imagine that I'm having a conversation with my dad and I'm airing out my grievances.
Wow.
The first time my therapist told me to do that, I looked at her and I'm just like, now ma'am, like, why would I do that? She's like, just try it. Just try it. The next week she asked me, did you do it? I said, no. She said, I said I couldn't bring myself to do it. And when I see how challenging it is to get some of those emotions out, that tells me that they especially need to come out.
Wow.
So when it comes to like my anger, I imagine that I'm having a conversation with my dad, and I yell, I express my frustrations, and to someone who doesn't know what's happening, I might look kind of crazy, but it's cathartic. It gets it out, and even if it doesn't feel like it's being received, I feel like it's being received. I think
it's all in the mind. Yeah. And the belief that they're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something different for both of us. I do believe that the dead are somewhere and they're listening and they're watching of us. But I'm not really, really strong on that because, yeah, I'm this person who thinks about like, let's move on. Let's think about the next thing. So I can be angry. I can be, imagining why did this had to happen, but I don't believe like they're listening. Like I believe that I can't get an answer for that. I have to figure that out myself. What will be the response? Now let's talk about our mothers because this is like the common thing.
Mother dearest.
Yes. So dear mama, wow. So a friend told me when I lost my mom that you don't heal from the loss of a mother ever. And then that it hits differently. The mother's loss hits differently from a father's loss. So you've lost both parents. You lost your mom first and then your dad later. I've lost my mom. My dad is still alive. But I took years before I even, like to date, I've never viewed the photos that were taken when my mom was like during the funeral. I don't view those photos to date. I've not viewed them. I just put a video clip on IG because I didn't want to lose it and I wanted to delete it from my phone. But anytime I scroll through my IG and I get there, I pass it like
Quickly.
very
Quickly.
fast. Yes. So I love that my brother had like a lot of those photos. Like when I was speaking, like the funeral and everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm ready to see them. But then again, I changed my mind overnight, so he didn't realize that I didn't ask him to give me. So I just traveled without asking him for them. So I still don't know what that is because any anniversary, like the 2 anniversaries, it's been a very sad day for me. I relived the whole experience because my mom died with a lot of questions that, she didn't answer, Yeah. So how was it like for you?
Oh.
Or do you believe that losing a mom hits differently from how, like the experience is different from daddy's?
I can speak on my experience in that they do hit differently. You have different relationships with both of your parents. And for me, because my mom had been sick sick on and off for a couple of years, it was kind of in the back of our head that it could happen, but it was never something that we were expecting. And I think my mom was such a light. That woman was just joy. Anytime she walked into a room, she just lit the whole place up. And her absence is very, very felt.
Yeah.
And my dad, absent, let me not say that I don't miss my dad. I absolutely do. But the relationship was just very different. The relationship was very different in that he was a Nigerian man who had very high expectations of his first daughter to succeed and to do well in school, to do well in life. And so I think I grew up with that, feeling that tension in that relationship. And so I think the ways that I had relationships with both my parents manifested in the ways that I have felt their grief for each of them. I think mom does hit differently. Like, I think I am, you see me, you see Angie. You see me, you see my mom.
Yeah.
But it's also, you see me, you see my dad in some ways too.
In what ways? The looks?
I think depending on the day, I could look like either one of them. But with my dad, like very, very about his business. Very about his business. And I think I inherited that from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because of the relationships that I had with them, my grief for each of them is very, very different.
Yeah.
It's like with my mom, it's a lot of gratitude. It is a lot of just, I remember her as love and joy.
Yeah.
And I think with my dad, there's a lot of anger that I'm having to work through.
Yeah.
Because as a child, and in hindsight, I have different opinions, but as a child, I grew up seeing him as this very, strict parent who was very, very tough on me.
Yeah.
This, that, and the third. And he, was trying to tell me what to do with my life, blah, 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 blah. And in hindsight, I'm just like, oh, okay. I see why you did that, and I can take it now, but the feelings are still there, and the feelings still need to be worked through.
Did you ever have a conversation with him on what he said that maybe to you find like was unfair?
I think he was a bit more cautious. He was a bit of a worrywart. He worried a lot, especially with my mom. And so I think he tried to put a lot of guardrails to make sure that,
He was from Nigeria as well?
Yes.
Probably because he was foreigner.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That, and my family is Igbo, so I think about what my family experienced in the Biafran War.
Yeah.
So as an adult, I can have, and this is me having this conversation after several years of facing this over and over and over again, that I'm just like, I'm learning to accept, they did the best that they could with what they had.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's tough to accept that. It's tough to accept because even the best sometimes still isn't good enough.
Yeah.
And even as I'm saying it now, my heart is like tightening. I'm just like, how can you say that? Like they did the best, and their best is amazing. It's allowing me to make certain choices and make decisions with my life that I might not otherwise. But there are other parts that I'm still very much so healing, like healing as a creative. There was no space for that. I was to be excellent in math and economics, and I was going to be a student. My dad was an engineer, so it just made sense.
Yes.
But the creative part of me is, I think, comes from my mom, and I think that part of me was kind of suppressed, and
Do you think it's coming out right now?
Oh, absolutely. By fire or by force, I'm making it come out, because that's so much of my essence, and I've learned that through my healing journey. I've moved through a lot of grief through dance, through yoga, through movement. My grief has manifested very physically in my body. When I was first finished school, I was seeing a chiropractor. I was going like 3 times a week. My spine was so messed up because I was holding on to so much. I had issues with my spine. I had issues with my jaw. I was just in a lot of I was experiencing chronic pain because it was just all that grief was living in my body. So as I have explored yoga and dance, especially as a way to move through my grief, I have seen a completely different side of me. I'm just like, oh, like this is just expression. This is another way to express myself in a way that was not accepted when I was younger. And so in that, I am giving space for younger Malaika who couldn't express herself in that way, and that is just...
So the question is, do you think people ever heal from grief?
Oh, right, thank you. No, I don't think. You don't heal from loss of a loved one? I don't think you can. I think you grow around your grief. I think
it's powerful. You grow around your grief.
I think if this is your grief, and this is you immediately after, like you and your grief are one and the same. But as you allow yourself to, accept the new reality, accept everything that they have given you, accept who you've become, you continue to just grow and expand around the grief. It doesn't feel as weighty, it doesn't take up as much of you, but it's still always there.
Do you ever have these moments when you probably miss your mom a lot or miss your dad, and you just want to lock yourself up and face it and feel it and cry if you want to?
Yeah, I give myself that space very intentionally. So for the anniversary of my mom's passing, I took the day off from work. I don't work on that day because I don't know what's gonna come up, and I don't want to be in a position where I'm now having to explain my tears to colleagues or to whoever. I don't even, every year since they've passed, the day has looked different.
Oh.
The grief has shown up very differently, depending on what else is happening in my life, whatever is happening in my family's life, my sister's life, the grief can show up very differently on that day. And I've learned that my grief actually starts around anniversaries, around Mother's Day, Father's Day. My grief actually starts showing up a couple weeks before.
Wow.
So I've paid attention to those cycles, and I'm still figuring it out. It's only been a couple years. But I know that it's coming, so I am very intentional about slowing my life down, making sure that I have the space to let whatever needs to come up, let it be. Because the worst thing is you're having these feelings that are trying to find their way out, and you're blocking it, and that's when, I know for me, that's when it usually comes out when in a way that isn't as healthy. So I'm learning to make sure that I'm giving the grief the space. On birthdays, on anniversaries, on holidays. The holiday season gets kind of tough. So, I ask my friends. My friends have been pretty good about, do you want to talk about your mom? Like, let me know when you want to just talk about your parents.
And do you have like those sessions when you just talk to your friends about your mom, what she was, who she was?
A lot of my friends now, I've met after my parents passed.
Wow. So they know this part of you.
So
what's the danger of blocking? Because for me, I'm someone who distracts himself when I am feeling the grief. For example, when my mom, the anniversary, that's the day I want to work the most. I want to distract myself. I don't want to even go on a journey, because I know journeys are very spiritual to me. Just staring outside and talking to God, talking to myself. And I'm also wired in the street. Like I'm a guy who, Nairobi looks chaotic to everybody. And for me, Nairobi is such a healing space for me, because I take a long walk in the streets. Those evenings when I'm low, I leave my laptop, my bag, everything in the office. Then I take a stroll in the street, pocketing. I see people, I talk about them. I see homeless kids, homeless people, and I tell God my dreams with this kind of people. And I look at, like Goethe Institute, where I studied German language and culture. My history is there, the people I met there. Sometimes I pick my call and call them, because that place has just reminded me of our times there. So for me, I'm wired in the street that way. But I realize it's sort of a distraction. I want the images to distract me, the light to distract me, so that when I get home, I'm so exhausted to think about any other thing. But some people would say there's a danger in, distracting yourself instead of immersing yourself in grief, so that you feel it, you let it go, or you let it consume you to some point, and then heal every other time. So that could also translate to the reason why to date I've never viewed the funeral images, because I know it's gonna take me to some reality which I kind of don't want to leave.
No, the body is going to do everything that it can. The body and the mind. The mind especially will do everything that it can to protect you. But the body will never forget. The emotions and feelings, whether you choose to face them or not, are still stored in your body. And we can have a separate conversation around how trauma gets passed down generation to generation. It stays within you. So I've done lots of things in my healing journey, whether it's been yoga or Tai Chi or therapy or dance or breath work. Meditate. I've done a lot of things because I personally know that whatever I don't heal will get passed on to whoever comes after me. I think it is very natural to want to distract yourself. So I don't want anyone to feel like there is any shame around how they maneuver through their grief. Maybe you're not ready. And if you're not, that is okay. Like, there's no timeline for when you should face those feelings if you know that that is not where you're at. I feel like I didn't have that luxury of like not addressing it because I had someone to take care of.
Yeah.
And I felt it was very important for me to be an example for her of how you address your feelings and how you can continue to move and grow from your grief. I think I will maybe change the language around the dangers of, not facing your grief, and kind of frame it around kind of like the opportunities that exist if you do choose to go down that journey. I think you can find a lot of clarity within yourself around who you are as a result of the relationship you had with that person you've now lost. I think you can, in facing them, you have the opportunity to really appreciate the love, however complicated the relationship with the person might have been. You can appreciate who they were and how they created, how their presence in your life has led you to that now, to that moment. For some people, grief manifests physically. For me, I felt it in my body, and it was like I felt like my body was on fire. There's a lot of research around what happens when you don't face your stress, when you don't manage your stress, when you don't acknowledge your traumas. Grief is a trauma. Grief is a trauma. We don't often talk about it as such. And so that getting stored in your body can do things can have physiological effects. And so I think the self-awareness around, whether or not you're facing it is the first step. But I think it's also important to understand what your support systems are if you do choose to go down that path. I feel very fortunate that I had a therapist who has been with me since my mom passed.
It's good that you've also mentioned the bit of the support system. And part of the support system, apart from the professionals that help us heal, it is also our family. And just as we conclude, I wanted to bring the bit of how does grief, especially loss of your parents, impact on the relationship with the extended family, especially your uncles, your aunties, your cousins, those people that there's a natural expectation that when you lose a loved one, there are people who should be there for you. They should come through. They should help you through the process. But there are also those people they lock the door once they lose their especially both parents or one parent. They lock that door. So how was the family support like for you as we summarize this?
That one was a tough one, and we're honestly still working through it. So most of my parents' immediate siblings still live in Nigeria. So the people who would be the most ready to support us couldn't. I think, the family that we had created in the States, a lot of people had a lot of opinions. A lot of opinions on what we should do. Someone said, "Oh, Malaika, you should get a place so you and your sisters can all live together." Like, we all need to be in different places. We all need to be in very different places. And I'm just like, who's paying for this house? Me? It was very challenging because prior to my parents' death, most of the extent of my relationship with many of my aunts and uncles was, "Oh, good evening, uncle. How are you? Oh, school is fine. How's insert cousin's name? Okay, thank you. Nice talking to you." There was no depth to a lot of the relationships. And they were all trying to show up now. But now I'm just like, okay, what are your motives? Like, what do you it was just very hard for me to understand, and really trust that they were looking for my best interests. So I leaned a lot into my friends, the aunts and uncles that I did, already have a relationship with. I leaned into those, as I worked to build trust and the other ones who were trying to be there for me. And it's taken some years. We're still in the process, and it's doing little by little, but I think I had to remain open to the fact that like these are people who care about me. These are people who cared about my parents.
Do they reach out to date, like just to know how you're doing, what you're up to?
Here and there. I think I'm in the process of opening that door up again. Because some people want to talk all the time, and I have my own life and I don't necessarily have time to talk as much as they may want to. So I try to, at least around holidays, to just send a text, we're doing well, sending updates about me and my sisters, and trying to think of the perspective, like, we are the children of people that they cared about. They would want to know. And I've just tried my best to keep up in that way. So we're still on that journey of, making those connections, but
I know you lost trust at some point. You wanted to find meaning into the conversations they would spark with you, but it's good that you also see the need of just, updating them on where you are, what are you up to, how are your siblings and all that.
Definitely.
Which is really amazing.
So
if today there's someone grieving out there or who is not able to move on from, loss of a loved one, what is that message that you'd have for them? As we sign this up.
I would say give yourself grace. Give yourself so much grace. Know that grief is a unpredictable journey, and it's not supposed to look any one way. But know that there are people who do care about you, and they can't help you if they don't know that you need help. So as much as you can, continue to lean on your community. And, even if they don't know how to help, even if you don't know what help you need, just allowing the space for that support to be there. People will get creative and you will come to find out what your needs are slowly by slowly, but people need to know that you need them to be there for you.
Wow. You've lost both parents. There are people who have both parents, but they don't appreciate them. You know that?
I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. But sometimes it takes losing it to really, really appreciate. So I always hope to share my story and share my journey so that people might be able to glean a piece of this without having to experience the same loss.
Like you never know your lover till you let them go. So you never know the value of your parents until they go. Thank you, Malaika, so much for being here. And I am looking forward to many more conversations that we need to have. Remember, we have to talk about wellness. We have to talk about trauma. And one more that I need to think about around creativity.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. And we'll be back. We'll be back for the next one.
All right. Thank you so much, Noblers. Thank you for always tuning in. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment if you can. Otherwise, see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.